Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati
Hare Krishna. Welcome. We are continuously reading Bhagavad-gita, and this edition, Bhagavad-gita as it is translated and commented by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are still in the second chapter, which is the contents of the Gita summarized. So we are speaking about that person. Arjuna is asking Krishna. Krishna is giving instructions how to live in this world. In this world, that is a material place. The material world, we are in a material body. We are sometimes, or maybe most of the time, very influenced by this material atmosphere. And Krishna is giving instructions how to apply this knowledge in a practical way, how to live a spiritual life in the material world. The art of life. Yoga. And Arjuna asks, how do you recognize that person? So here's a series of verses how to recognize this person, and this is one of the verses. Text 61. Tani sarvani sangyamya yukta asati matparaha vashehi yasyendriyani tasya pragya pratishtata. One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. As you may or may not have noticed, these verses, they all have the word steady in them. Not always the same Sanskrit word, but that idea of steadiness is significant in a person who is fixed in spiritual consciousness. Purport: that the highest conception of yoga perfection is Krishna consciousness is clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvasa Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarish, and Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sage's injustices and thereby emerged victorious. Yes, the story here, of course, is also in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, if this hearing and reading from the Bhagavad-gita and hearing more about Krishna and getting a little curious about the backstories to everything, I warmly recommend read the Bhagavad-gita first, but then go on to reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, because that's like where everything is expanded. We get the persons, we get the stories, and we get a deeper insight into the principles of spiritual life. And here this story takes place. Ambarish Maharaj, he was a king, and generally in the Vedic context, kings are of course respected in a sense. They are the rulers of the land. They are protecting the country and giving directions and instructions, but they in turn take instructions from the brahmanas, who are learned, self-controlled, austere, and generous with that knowledge. And Durvasa Muni, he was a brahmana. He was a great mystic yogi. He had great powers, because out of austerity comes power. We are maybe not very familiar with that nowadays, because our powers are either political, economical, physical, but yogic powers are not very, we're not very familiar with that. But we even hear those who are going into some kind of competition, sports people, chess players, debaters, or in political arenas and so on, they may choose the day before to cut out a lot of the regular sense gratification, sense enjoyment, to become more sharp, to become more, and that's just a small example, but a yogic powers. I'm living in Almviksgård in Sweden. We have a temple there, and right now in the mornings we are going through the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and right now we are hearing about the yogic powers, and they are very impressive. very impressive indeed. And Durvasha Muni here, he came upon, he does that, he travels, he has lots of disciples, and the Vedic custom is that you invite such a person in, you offer some, whatever you have, some. If you have nothing, you will offer greeting, you will offer your words in a kind and gentle way. You will offer a place to sit, and you will offer a glass of water, because everyone can offer those things. But if you have more, you will maybe offer a grand feast and some gifts and so on. So Maharaj Parikshit had been performing a specific austerity. He had been following Ekadashi Vrata. And Ekadashi is Sanskrit, it means 11. And in in our culture, we follow the moon calendar. So every month has 28 moon days, and they sometimes overlap with the Sundays in such a way that the month gets maybe a little longer than 28 days. But we count the moon days, and the 11th day of the, I'm not sure how you say that in English, the waning moon and the waxing moon, when the moon grows and when the moon shrinks. The 11th day is a day that is very useful for spiritual life and austerity, and not at all good for material things. So those days, the devotees and other spiritualists refrain from unnecessary material activities, material endeavors, and increase their spiritual practices. And it comes with a certain amount of fasting. You can of course fast completely, but you can also, what we do as Krishna devotees, we fast from grains and beans. So we eat fruits and vegetables and milk products, but we avoid grains and beans, because it is, how to say, it increases your spiritual strength, and austerity in general increases your mental, all your strengths, and that day is very good for that. And eating the grains and the beans, that becomes a burden. It becomes a burden spiritually. It is a little bit like we avoid certain activities. We may call those activities sinful. We may also call them obstacles or impractical. We don't eat meat, which is easy to understand. We don't want to kill someone else in order to eat. That will it will be a burden on our own karma. It will also be a burden on our consciousness. We will not develop the finer sensibility of humility and kindness, compassion. How can you be compassionate if you're aware that what you're eating means somebody got killed, and you keep doing it every day anyway? This does something to your consciousness. These things are subtle, but they are there. Intoxication, of course, it makes us confused, it makes us covered, and we are already covered enough. We are in this material body, we identify with it, we get carried away by the senses and the mind, and intoxication on top of that. And we are very strict. We don't take heavy drugs, we don't take light drugs, we don't take alcohol, coffee or cigarettes, because all those things, we don't need them. We're already covered enough. We want to be as, how to say, peacefully, consciously pure as possible, and that's one thing we avoid. And on the Ekadashi day, all those activities, they took shelter of the grains. So if you eat grains, it's a little bit similar to performing those activities, and it's very unnecessary for a devotee to do that. But Maharaj Ambarish, he was taking a vow, he was taking a strong promise to carry out his Ekadashi fasting for 1 full year. So every Ekadashi he would fast, and he would fast completely. He wouldn't even drink water. And then, if you have this calendar, you can see it has times on it. What time do you break your Ekadashi fast? So if you just want to avoid eating grains and beans, that's fine. But if you want to be a little scientific about that austerity, you also want to break the fast at a specific time. So Durvasha Muni came, and Maharaj Ambarish happily invited him and said, please come and take a feast here with us. And Ambarish Maharaj said, yes, I will do so. I will just go down to the river and take a bath. And he went down with his, I don't know how many disciples, hundreds and thousands of disciples, so many disciples. And they took a bath, and they stayed away for quite a long time, because sometimes when you take a bath in the river, it takes a little time. And during that time came when Maharaj Ambarish was supposed to break his fast. But at the same time, when you're the host, still today in India it is like that. When you're the host and you're serving your guests, you don't eat before your guests. You serve your guests first and then you eat yourself after. And that time came when he had to break his fast. But at the same time, his guests hadn't come, so he hadn't been able to serve them yet. So he didn't exactly know what to do, because this was the last day he'd been fasting for. He hadn't been fasting for a whole year, but he had been followed ekadasi every month for that whole year. So he was asking advice from some learned people he had around him, because he's a king, he has access to all kinds of learned people. And they advised him to drink water, because drinking water breaks the fast and it also doesn't break the fast. So that's kind of his compromise. So he drank some water. And Durvasha Muni, who has these mystic powers, he could immediately understand what happened. So he came back very angry. How dare you? You're a king, you're supposed to serve the brahmanas and the yogis, and you're eating before me. He became very angry. He pulled out a hair and he threw it on the ground with a curse. So a demon sprang up. So he thought, now Maharaj Ambarish is in trouble. But that demon turned around and started to chase Ambarish Maharaj instead. Because that demon was also, Krishna was also in his heart. And he could not attack a devotee who had innocently not done any harm. He was chasing Durvasha Muni. Durvasha Muni was running all over the universe, trying to take shelter of Brahma, Shiva. He even came to Lord Vishnu. And Vishnu said, I cannot help you. You have committed offense at the feet of my devotee. You have to ask him for forgiveness. So he went back there and humbly submitted before Maharaj Ambarish, who said, will you please take your meal now? I have been waiting. He still waited because he had invited him, he hadn't come. So he wasn't touched by that. He didn't have that pride, he didn't have that arrogance. But he wasn't, he was a devotee in his heart, in his practice, in his devotion towards the Lord. But he hadn't been practicing all this mystic yoga, building up his powers. And Durvasha Muni, he's famous all over the universe. He can do these kind of things that we can't even imagine. But he couldn't control his pride, he couldn't control his anger. Maharaj Ambarish, he was simply thinking, I'm serving the Lord here with my ekadasi vrata. I am serving the great sages who are coming to visit me. So I didn't manage to serve him very nicely. He got upset, but I hope he will come back so I can still offer him that food that I had prepared for him. So in that way, simply by taking shelter of Krishna, simply by developing devotion to Krishna, the other qualities develop also. Lack of pride, lack of anger, and specifically in this verse it speaks about controlling the senses. Because the senses, if you don't have a spiritual vision, if you don't have some level of spiritual realization, where is the question of controlling the senses? You will, I will, we all will identify with the senses. I am hungry, I am thirsty, I am angry, I am tired, I'm sad. That's me. And generally it really isn't. It really is not. You look at the body of a little baby, they are hungry every 20 minutes. And then when they want to sleep, they just conk out. Or if they have been tired for too long and have been unable to fall asleep, they are so disturbed, they are so unhappy, and there's no control over it. But when you're a little older, okay, you're a little tired, but you know, you grit your teeth and you get on with it. You're a little hungry, but you know, okay, I'm on my way home now, and at home I have food, and I can tolerate this for, whatever, an hour, half a day. I can do that because I have some perspective, I have some intelligence, because I have a different body. I am the same soul, a little baby or a big grown-up old lady, same soul, but the body is different. So we identify with the senses. A baby's senses need to eat all the time. And a grown-up can have some perspective, but a spiritualist can realize to some level that I'm not this body. As a spiritualist, a devotee, can be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, in activities in service to Krishna, and that level is above the level of the senses. A yogi can also control his senses. In order to gain all that power, Durvasha Muni have been doing much austerity. Sometimes, I don't have a list of his specific austerities, But I have heard what yogis do. They sit in a ring of fire in the middle of the day, meditating, not caring. They take bath in the winter, not caring, controlling that body, not eating particularly very much. I hear Durvasha Muni, I've heard about him before. He only eats leaves, dry leaves. He doesn't eat food so much. He has some vratas and he gets some powers from that. But when pride comes, when anger comes, there's no control. Because still that false ego is there. Whereas a devotee, in Krishna consciousness, our process is not to, okay, my senses are here and I have to pull them back, push them down, push them down. No, we direct them towards Krishna, and then we feel that inner satisfaction. Then we don't feel that there is a constant push to drive us into that sense gratification. And then that sense control can become permanent because it becomes natural. It becomes a natural good life. There isn't the constant struggle with the senses. This may take some time, but it is a process that actually works. Yeah, I talked a lot here. Let me read some more from this purport. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications, as mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 4, text 18 to 20. So if you want to, you can look that chapter up. It's interesting. Saivai mana Krishna padara vindayor vachangsi vaikunta gunarnu varnane karo harer mandira marjanadishu shrutim chakara chutatsat kathodaye mukunda lingalaya darshane drishau tadbhritya gatra sparshenga sangamam geranang tat chatat padasarodya saurabhe Srimat Tulasya Rasanang Tadarpite Padau Hare Kshetra Padanusarpane Shiro Hrishikesha Padabhivandane Kamang Chadasyena Tu Kama Kamaya Yatotama Shloka Janashrayaratihi. King Ambarish fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing of the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotees, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy places where his temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord, and all these qualifications made him fit to become a matpara devotee of the Lord. The word matpara is most significant in this connection. How one can become matpara is described in the life of Maharaj Ambarish. Srila Baladevi Jabhushana, a great scholar and acharya in the line of the matpara, remarks, Mad bhakti prabhavena sarvendriya vijaya purvika svatma drishti sulabheti bhava. The senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotional service to Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given. As a blazing fire burns everything within a room, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something other than Vishnu's form simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of real yoga. So here is an example how every sense, every part of your life can be engaged in Krishna service. Maharaj Ambarish did everything. Some devotees will focus on one activity in that service, but as long as that becomes a prominent part of your life, you will be able to find that level of full absorption in love of God. And that means the human form of life will be perfect. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for watching. We aim for updates every Tuesday and Friday. Please come back. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there. We also have some links and information for you. And there is, of course, the subscribe button. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm a Hare Krishna, and I approve this message. Subscribe.
Vandeham Shri Guru Yuta